It's time for the Double Stop with Brian Sword.
Say goodbye to the sun. Deconstruction has begun. Say goodbye to the sun. All your hopes and dreams are done.
Welcome to the Double Stop. I'm Brian Sword. This week on the show, I've got an update interview with Joel Hoekstra. Last time he was on the show, he went through his entire career up until Whitesnake, and then he got a little quiet because they hadn't really announced that it was a Purple album yet. So now the album's come out, they've done the first leg of the tour, and they've announced his new project, kind of a side band project. So I figured it was a good time to get him back in the show. So he talks about the Purple album and the recording of it, talked about the first leg of the tour and how that's going, and then he talked about his new album, Dying to Live, which is the project name Joel Hoekstra's 13. So this is not the usual 60 to 90 minute interview you're used to hearing. It's more of a 25 minute quick episode. But it gives a good update of what's going on with him now and where he's at. So let's get right to it. Here is my update interview with Joel Hoekstra. When we last spoke, you had the Whitesnake gig, and your cards were very close to your chest. Now that some time has passed and we all know what happened there, can you start by explaining the process of recording the record? What stage was it at when you joined, and the recording process overall?
Well, the first time I went out to meet with David, they put a pre-production of Lady Double Dealer to have me take a stab at playing a solo on it. So that was basically my audition, and pretty much what you hear on the album is what I played on my audition, and I wrote the harmony solo that follows shortly thereafter. So basically there was pre-production for all the songs when I first went out there, first joined, but everything had been kind of picked out in terms of what songs and a lot of the arrangements. David turned over the acoustic stuff like Sail Away and Soldier of Fortune to me to kind of come up with the arrangements on and make the guitars real lush. But for the most part, yeah, it was there, and so I went back out in August to actually start to track on it, and by that time, Tommy and Michael had done their tracks, Tommy Aldridge and Michael Devin, and I think Reb had his rhythms on there, as I recall, or like at least some of them. So basically I went out and just did the bulk of my stuff, and that went well. And there was one other time, like when we went out to shoot the videos of David's, where I did a little bit of recording still, but for the most part, yeah, it went really well, and had a good time doing it. I think it wasn't necessarily a note-for-note re-record type of situation for those that haven't heard the album. I mean, we weren't going to use keyboards as heavily on this as the original Deep Purple versions. So here I'm coming in, and Reb has the basic riff covered with his rhythms. So for me, it was about how can I make up a second guitar part that would fit in with this if these were brand new songs? What would I play? And of course, we did our own thing as far as solos, and I just wanted to come up with as many sounds and different ideas as I could on it. So, I ended up getting Slide on there and Talkbox, and just as many things as I could come up with to kind of make put our unique stamp on it, so to speak. Like some of the stuff at the end of Holy Man, all the Ebo stuff on there. Lots of just ideas like that to kind of put some kind of unique spin on these.
And what was your thought when you first heard that they're going to revisit the Purple songs?
I mean, for me, it sounded great because I love the idea of being able to play what I wanted essentially on these awesome proven songs and get an opportunity to work with this killer lineup and work with David in the studio. So for me, it was fantastic. And I think a lot, like initially people were like, oh, it's just a re-record thing, a cover album after all that. But I think our creative muscles were flexed a lot more than people realized. And the more people listen to the album, the more they recognize that.
And on a personal level, for me, it was like I'd heard Whitesnake do a lot of the classic songs before, like Burn and whatnot. But then it came songs like The Gypsy and those kind of songs that I wasn't as familiar with. And those are the ones that really popped for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And same here, man. I mean, I wasn't totally familiar with those songs. I was familiar with like Burn and Stormbringer. And so for me, getting an opportunity to, I basically listened to all the originals, did nothing but listen to them for a few weeks. And then I transcribed it all, everything that was on there guitar-wise, and then went into the studio, my own thing with it, forgot it all, as they say, you know. So David was great in that respect. I mean, he really wanted us to do our own thing, guitar-wise, on this. He didn't want us to come off like a cover band or anything like that. So he wanted personality in it, and for me, it was a lot of fun. I mean, what a great opportunity.
Now, for the tour, I caught the Vancouver show, so that was, I think, third or fourth, and things were still, I think, slightly being ironed out, but it was a brilliant show, and it was really interesting to watch because I think in terms of the John Sykes sound, that kind of went to you because that's not Reb's sound, but he was very much the band leader, so it was an interesting dynamic to see him kind of really let you play a lot because of the Sykes similarities, Les Paul and whatnot, but he was still kind of the band leader. So what was your experience, do you think, when you joined in, when you started preparing for the live tour and having Reb as kind of the musical director?
Yeah, I think Reb he's not really the type of guy that wants to play every solo, and neither am I, really. I'm used to working in a guitar team, so I think neither one of us are particularly aggressive in that department. So yeah, it's been great working with him, man. He basically gives me solos that he feels like are going to sound good if I'm playing them, and that's worked out just fine. I have no complaints in terms of the workload or anything like that. I feel like everybody's getting what they want in this lineup right now. We really had a great opening leg of the tour in terms of chemistry and in terms of fan reaction and reviews and things like that. Every single review was really positive, and yeah, no complaints, man.
You have a European leg coming up, and there is, I looked at the Whitesnake site, and it says more dates coming. How long do you see this tour going?
Well, I can't talk too much about it, but yeah, there's lots of talk. There's there's lots of talk about extending more dates, and David's got lots of ideas that he's throwing around right now, so it's exciting. I think he's inspired, feeling inspired to work with all of us, and that's a great thing.
He's talked about how this is possibly going to be his last big rock record, but when I saw him in concert, he did not look like a guy who was running low with fuel in the tank. He seemed like he had a lot left going.
Yeah, I know there was some stuff said about that, but I don't know how much of that was him speculating and not being set on it, but he certainly seems very inspired on the road with us right now. He feels like we're onto something magical with this lineup in terms of the chemistry, and it was just great, man. It was like rock and roll bliss out there, this opening run. I mean, it was 3 months, and I swear it was just nothing but laughs on the band bus, and we're having a great time on stage and off, and there was just no drama at all. I mean, it was just fantastic.
Now, for your new record, is it fair to call it a solo record? It's still Joel Hoekstra on the title.
Well, I'm calling it a side project or a project name. The reason being, I mean, I put out 3 solo albums years ago that were primarily instrumental guitar albums. So the more people got to know me, I had these 2 rock fusion albums and an acoustic album out, and it's not exactly what people are used to hearing from me in Night Ranger and Whitesnake or even Rock of Ages or Trans-Siberian Orchestra when people come see me in that stuff. So I've had lots of people saying, how come you don't just record like a normal rock album with like vocal songs and stuff, which I've always wanted to do too. I mean, it always sounds like a great idea. So this is that album. I finally did that. And so in one respect, you put this in and you listen to it, it doesn't sound like a guitar album. There's no wankage. There's no 3-minute solos or anything like that, or me sweeping arpeggios anywhere. So
Yeah.
It basically just sounds like a rock album. So I had this weird dilemma of like, do I call it a solo album? And I can't really call it a band because I did all of the writing on it. I wrote all the words and melodies and the whole 9 yards. So for me to call it a band wouldn't be fair to the musicians that helped me out on it. So I thought the most appropriate thing was to give it a project name. So Joel Hoekstra's 13 is the project, and the album is Dying to Live.
Now, what is the genesis of this album, the history of it? Is it something you've been working on for a long time, or is it just something where you decided to do it and off you went?
It kind of came together piece by piece. I mean, I started with riffs 2 years ago, and I had 7 songs kind of mapped out in terms of riffs, and had Tony Franklin and Vinny Appice lay stuff down, and went to Russell Allen as kind of like, maybe he'll be my writing partner on this, maybe we'll put it out as an EP. Russell was really just so slammed with Adrenaline Mob and Symphony X, it kind of came down to me doing the writing and having him sing on it. And so here I had these 7 songs with this killer lineup. I mean, Russell Allen, Jeff Scott Soto sang backups for him on those songs, and Vinny Appice, Tony Franklin, and Derek Sherinian. And I went, well, this is pretty cool. I could either just put this out on my own or take it to Frontiers and maybe try and get a deal for it. And Frontiers wanted to sign it, so that seemed like a great opportunity for me to be able to get a worldwide release on it, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing is, they don't do EPs. They like to do full-length albums, so that meant writing 6 more songs, and at that point, it just seemed to make sense to have Jeff Scott Soto sing on it as well, because he had really done me a solid. He's overqualified to be a background singer, so I thought it just made sense to have Jeff sing on there too. And I mean, this album couldn't have happened without him in a lot of ways, man. Jeff is just a great friend and obviously an amazing singer. Everybody knows that. So having both of these, I consider to be two of the best singers in rock on this thing, is really awesome for me. And all these great musicians really helped bring these songs to life, and there was really a lot of them doing me a solid on it more than anything. I mean, I owe these guys a lot for playing on it, and very humbled that they would.
So is it that the Russell Allen was the first batch and then the Jeff Scott Soto was the second batch?
Yep, exactly. But it's sequenced on the album so to flow the best. So it's not like you listen to Russell's songs first and then Jeff's on the album. They're kind of sequenced so they make the most sense in terms of the flow.
That was going to be my next question in terms of a sequence on it, which it's perhaps not. It's still important, but it's not like it was with the days of vinyl and whatnot, where there's a lot of technical sides that you had to keep in mind. But it still seemed like an interesting challenge to have 2 lead singers and figure out the best way to sequence the songs. How much of a challenge was it?
It was a bit of a challenge because the album is pretty diverse, too. So a couple of the songs that lived on the fringe became bonus tracks. Killer Be Killed is the digital download bonus track, and that's like really heavy. It was the heaviest one easily. And then there was a song called Never Want that's kind of bluesy. It had like a blues riff to it almost. So that became the Japanese bonus track, just to focus the sound as much as possible for the 11 that were actually going to be on there. And then from there, I mean, even then, there's still kind of some, you know, hooky kind of poppy stuff, and there's some real heavy stuff on there. So for me, I describe the album as Dio-ish at its heaviest and Foreigner-ish at its lightest. So to get all that to flow, yeah, it was just a matter of picking the songs that sounded best back to back, and the album kind of ends up on a more majory, not the minor key songs, but kind of majory and positive. So starts out real heavy and kind of flows into more of a positive poppy ending.
Now, when you decided upon your rhythm section, which is very pretty legendary, was it a matter of calling your friends, or did you have a specific sound you're looking for and you reached out them specifically for that sound?
No, everything kind of just went step by step with this, and it just was going to be what it was going to be. So it started with me talking to Tony Franklin, because we had just finished up doing a completely different type of project called VHF. That was more like psychedelic instrumental rock. Again, another thing that I was a part of where my fans said, like, hey, why don't you put something out with vocals that we can latch onto? So anyway, I asked Tony, I'm like, hey, dude, would you want to do like an album like this if I write these songs? And he was into it, and I said, who would be a drummer that you'd want to work with on it? And he recommended Vinny. So thankfully, I think probably because Tony asked him, he was willing to play on it. And so that was, all of a sudden I had this cool kind of like, wow, this is, Dio era Black Sabbath rhythm section sounding thing going on here. And so Russell Allen really was the next piece of the puzzle to fall in place. He had signed up to do Trans-Siberian Orchestra, the tour that I do. And so I heard him and was like, wow, man, this guy's got to be the guy to sing on this. And as I said, I think after that I hit up Soto to sing backgrounds on Russell's tracks, kind of called in a favor from him on that one because I'd done some playing and co-writing on his stuff in the past. And so Jeff did that, and then really at the end, after all the guitars and everything, I still was like, there's room for texture on this, and like there's some gaps, and I decided I'd like to have keyboards on it as well. And I just started at the top with Derek Sherinian. I mean, he was like the first guy you think of, right? He's like the top call guy. So I was like, hey, would you be into doing this? And Derek and I had never had a chance to work together, and again, I mean, he was overqualified for this gig. I think he has a couple solos on the album, but obviously Derek's got chops for days, but he was kind enough to be the keyboard player on this. So.
And do you have any plans to tour for this? You think that'll happen?
Hey, man, I just want to get it out there, and hopefully the album will be received well, and there will be some kind of demand, and maybe the situation would be right. I would never rule out any effort to support it. I'm definitely proud of the way the album came out. I hope people give it a shot and dig the songs. The trick is to get everybody to listen to it right now. I think people will really like it when they give it a go, man. So hopefully it'll present an opportunity for that.
One thing I really like about what I've heard is it definitely falls into the melodic rock side of things. It's a great sound.
Thanks so much. Yeah, Chris Collier is a great mix engineer. He did a great job, I think, with the sonic end of things on it. And a lot just has to do with, I think, the fact that I avoided the whole, you get this super band thing or whatever you want to call it, this great lineup of people playing, and the inclination is to give everybody solo breaks and all this stuff to satisfy everybody's egos. But I really just tried to keep it like more about what the fans were asking and what I would want to listen to as a fan. Just cool songs with a modest guitar solo in the middle or whatever. Nothing. There's absolutely no big 3-minute breaks of me showing off on it, or for anybody really for that matter. There's some, just cool little instrumental breaks in the middle of these songs, but I think avoiding the whole prog thing, getting too proggy or getting too wanky with the whole thing was definitely key. And it's really more about the songs in the end, and hopefully something that people will really want to listen to.
Is that hard to rein yourself in when you can solo for days?
Not really. I mean, not for me, because I definitely can look at it like I'm a fan and what I would want to hear. And as much as I love playing guitar and love guitar solos, I'm not a huge fan of listening to somebody go on and on for 2-3 minutes in a song or something, unless it's like, the end of Comfortably Numb or something, which is wonderful. But I mean, there's only so many times where that really works in my mind musically. I'm more of a song guy in the end anyway. I think that's why I've gravitated towards the world of playing in an actual band and being a guitar player who functions within the structure of playing songs that people want to hear.
Last time we chatted, your schedule just blew me away of how much you had on your plate. Have you managed to pull back a little bit now?
Well, right now with just getting the promo together for this, it's pretty extensive. and with what Whitesnake has ahead, and I've got a couple cool other opportunities that I haven't really begun to talk about yet with everybody, just because this is sort of the task at hand is to make sure everybody knows that this album is coming out and what it is, and hopefully they'll listen to it. But I like to stay productive, man. I really do, because I don't want to take for granted the opportunity to make a living as a rock guitar player. There's a lot of great players out there that struggle to build careers, and the window can close on you pretty easily if you're not diligent, I think, and working hard. So I lay no claims to be like, a big rock star or anything like that. I just want to be like a good rock guitar player that can, hopefully continue to make a living that way. That pretty much defines success for me, because if I can get through my life doing this, that's good enough for me.
This is what we believe.
That was Joel Hoekstra. His new album, Dying to Live, is out in October on Frontiers. And that's it for this week. I'm not sure if I'm going to have an episode next week because I got some unexpected travel coming up, but we'll see. So keep an eye on Facebook at The Double Stop and Twitter at The Double Stop for updates to see if I can get an episode together. Until next time, thanks for listening to The Double Stop.